just go buy Val. That's it. That's your contribution to making the world a better place. If you do that single thing, all of these sort of repercussions will happen, and the world will change.
This cryptocurrency that I'm going to be talking about represents the future of money.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Ready to hop in the 6-4 and cruise around the blocks? There's a storm coming to the underworld and the heat is on. Take over the blocks and call the shots. It's time to hustle or get hustled. What's it gonna be? Stay sharp. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. Don't let them catch you slipping. Only real gangsters thrive in the dope wars world.
Hey, Eric, thank you so much for making yourself available. You are one of the team, or you're involved with valcurrency.com?
Yeah, I guess technically I'm a global ambassador, but I'm also directly involved in the rollout of the system.
Okay, we're going to find out about the system, right? And just got to acknowledge that we're recording this. What day is it? Tuesday, the 14th of June. And boy, has it been exciting.
No, it's yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I think we're still waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? I think Celsius is sitting at that sort of margin call level where everything just like a couple $100 million could just dump on the market. So we've not seen the end of it.
No, I don't think so. And was it 145%? It went up today, Celsius, the token.
Yeah, but that makes no sense at all, right? Unless they've got some discussions with a sort of white knight that's going to come in and rescue them. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's a lot in crypto that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the end of it, because what we are dealing with is an incredibly volatile, unstable macro environment. And I just want to let people know, I did an interview with Tom Luongo, which posted a few days ago, and I recommend people go check it out, because he's talking about the war between the Federal Reserve and the ECB and WEF, and how that is, as well as the war in the Ukraine and Russia and everything else going on, the supply chain shocks and lockdown and everything. Oh my God, these are far too interesting times.
No, I know, indeed. I mean, the disintegration of LIBOR has really changed the picture, right? It's given Americans the sort of sovereignty over own monetary policy, and that's really having just devastating consequences for Europe now, and really for the rest of the world. As a matter of fact, it's affecting us as well, right? I mean, hiking interest rates is just hard.
Yeah. Very good. Now, people want to dig into that, go check out that video, and also my other interviews with Tom, and check out his channel and stuff. But we're going to be talking about this cryptocurrency that's not Bitcoin. You say you are it's the future of money, valcurrency, valcurrency.com. I'll have all the links in the description below. And you say, oh, by the way, please subscribe, comment, like, all that business. Follow me on Twitter, CryptoRichYT. If you're
already subscribed.
YouTube, okay, good. If you're watching this on YouTube, come over to Odyssey, because that's censorship resistant, and support my work there. Now, first of all, is this a really, really good time to go looking into some little bitty altcoin that nobody's heard of?
Right. So this is a little itty bitty coin that no one's heard of, except that's about to change in a very substantive way. We've been largely in stealth mode. In fact, this is really the first time that I talk about this publicly.
Right, okay.
So there's probably a bunch of things that I may not be able to say, but I think the way that we've approached the sort of promotion of this, it has been very commercial. In fact, it's the whole structure of the currency is very mercantile, right? So, for example, in your case, your audience is small, but it's a sophisticated select audience, right? And this is what we've done. We've had a lot of private discussions with groups and things like that, but under a controlled environment. So I think we're almost to the point now that we can actually start talking about this.
Okay. And what is this? What is VAL?
So I think of VAL as Bitcoin 2.0 for a number of reasons. The first is that a lot of people look at Bitcoin and they say, oh my God, it went to 60,000. I completely missed out, right? And there's there's like layers and layers of comprehension necessary for someone to actually make a commitment to Bitcoin. They'll look at it and they'll, it goes up and then it crashes and they go, see, it's a bad thing, and I was glad I didn't get in. And then it goes up again and it doesn't crash, right? It crashes to a higher level, and then they think, wow, I think I was wrong, and is it too late now, right? So all of that kind of stuff, it has had a really hard time with acceptance. Mm-hmm. Still, in 10 years, it went from 5 cents to $60,000, right? On the basis of really two components. One is ideological. People looked at Bitcoin, and especially Austrian types like me, they looked at it and said, "Oh, this is real money. I recognize real money when I see it." And so I'd rather hold that than the sort of shitfest of other assets that one can buy. And the second component is speculative, right? Those are the guys that say, I don't know what real money is. I don't frankly care. But I can see an upslope in a curve, and I'll buy it now and sort of hold on to it and sell it, right? Now, VOW has both of those components, but it has a third component, which really no other crypto token has, which is huge compared. And that is, it has commercial demand.
Okay, forgive me. Forgive me for being a little bit skeptical and cynical, right?
Yeah, I know. It's like to the moon, right? Everybody says that. But.
That's right, to the moon, right? Because everything's crashed. I got friends and family and, cousins who are just so upset and everything. I'm like, listen, I've been in this crypto for 8 years. It's fine. Just keep calm and hodl. Buy some more, right? But you're coming along and saying, hey, listen, within a year, it's going to be up at this Bitcoin levels. And I'm like, well, what's the tokenomics? What's so special about this? How is, how many, I've heard so many altcoins, and I'm sure people who've been watching this, so many altcoins making this claim. Yeah, we're the Bitcoin SV. That's the real Bitcoin. No, Bitcoin Cash is the real altcoin. No, Litecoin. No, Monero. No, Pirate Chain. Pirate Chain, yes.
Yeah, I mean the space is rife with scams, and
none of the ones that I've named are scams. Just to be clear.
Yep, sure. No, but I mean there are legitimate projects out there working on technology, right? I mean there's the issue of scaling, right? How do you scale in a fully decentralized environment, right? I mean EOS scaled, right? They went up to 1,000 transactions a second, but they did it by sacrificing decentralization. So okay. There are things like privacy, there's the privacy groups, the projects. There's the whole issue of IBC, inter-blockchain communication, how do blockchains talk to each other. So there's a lot of work being done by really, really smart people out there. Mm-hmm. That is essentially plumbing, right? How do we physically work out the math and the logistics, right? I like to say that, math and logistics, to make something happen. Now, VOW is none of those things. VOW is actually blockchain agnostic. What it is it's a financial innovation. It is taking so I'd like to say that Bitcoin was a breakthrough, right? And it is in its own right.
Yes.
But the breakthrough is a little bit of it's a little bit underwhelming from a certain perspective. What Bitcoin's great achievement was to recreate real money. And we had real money forever and ever, right? We had gold. Gold is real money.
Yeah.
Right. And what really makes for money is the fact that you can't just manufacture it, right? Gold exists and you have to go find it.
You have
right?
to work.
Exactly. You have to work for it, or you have to either get it from someone or you have to go find it in the earth, which takes a lot of effort. And there's only so much of it. It's rare. It's scarce, right? Mm-hmm. So up until Nixon delinks from gold and everyone just goes towards the fiat thing, we had real money. Now, what Bitcoin does is it brings back real money to the world. And to boot, it brings real money to the digital world, because the reality is we don't live in the old world where a lot of stuff is done in person now. It's all computers, right? So try sending an ounce of gold over to, I don't know, anywhere else, right? You literally can't. But you can send a Bitcoin in 0.3 seconds anywhere in the world, no questions asked. Clearly, simply better money, right?
Yep.
But the problem is that it's just a rudiment. It's a component in something that needs to be bigger, and VOW is that bigger thing. VOW is actually an economic model. and it uses the mechanisms that Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto invented, but it uses them in a completely novel way, right? That allows, and when I say economic model, I mean that's kind of a nebulous term. If you think about, like my background is really in token economics, right? Let's just say. And that really tends to be a discussion about how many tokens are there and who gets what. Like the founders get, that's not token economics at all, right? Token economics is really about what are you doing with the token? Who's going to consume it? How is it going to be transferred? Why? All this kind of stuff. So when you think about an economic model, it's a really, really big thing, right? You look at the world, the entire world, and you say it runs on finance, it runs on economy, and there's a model for that. So can we replace that? And the answer is, well, yeah, probably, but the replacement would have to make a really, really fundamental change to something in the economic model, and VOW does that.
Okay, so take us through, what is VOW? What does it do? What's the token economics? Where did it come from? Proof of stake, proof of work, all that business.
Right. So VOW is three things. It is a liquidity mechanism. It represents the decentralization of currency issuance, and it is a fiat to crypto on-ramp. So let's take the first one, right? Long time ago, there was a guy, like 12,000 years ago, that long ago, right? There was a guy growing potatoes, and some other dude showed up. He'd killed the deer and made moccasins, and the two guys go about haggling over how many potatoes, right? And the guy with the moccasins wants 10. The guy with the potatoes said, no, I'll give you 8. And so is born something called the bid-ask spread, right? And that spread survives through to our most sophisticated modern markets today, right? And basically, if that spread is positive, there's no trade. So we measure liquidity based on the spread. When we have a very narrow spread, then we have a lot of liquidity, and liquidity is hugely important to everything we do, especially in the crypto markets, right? I mean, we talk about Bitcoin being the single most liquid asset on the planet, probably. We care a great deal about that, and there's reasons that we can get into if you want, but whatever. The point is this: the buyer must meet the seller, right? And the way that the transaction was structured, all the way back to the 12,000 years ago, was that the buyer always wants a lower price and the seller always wants a higher price, so that their incentives are antipodal. They're opposing each other, right? They're pulling against each other. So one of the works of one of the sort of goals of token economics is to understand incentives and to be able to align incentives in a transaction or in a system, right? And what VOW has done is it has taken these antipodal interests and just sort of folded them so that they are now properly aligned. In other words, VOW has redefined the relationship between two transactants in a transaction, which has frankly never been done before. And
how does it do that?
Right. So I'll explain a little bit about the mechanism, and I'll explain it from a very mercantile perspective, right? But I just want to make mention that if you change something truly, truly fundamental in any system, it has just enormous repercussions, right? It's that thing about the butterfly beating its wings, and then there's a storm in some other part of the planet, that kind of thing. I'm going to give you an example of how VOW actually works in real life, for you to understand how it realigns incentives and how it does this bit of voodoo, right? Take a merchant, let's say Nike. They sell shoes for, let's say, $100, right? And they're doing some amount of business, and all of a sudden sales slack. What happens is that the bid fell. So now what they have to do is they have to lower the ask, or they get no sales. If they get no sales, that's a shit show, right? Everyone's scared. So they lower the ask, but here's the problem. Let's say that they have $3 earnings per share and they have a P of 20, so their stock is $60. Then as a function of their lowering the ask, they lose $1 per share. And all of a sudden their stock drops by $20, right? And now shareholders are unhappy and they're dumping your stock, and management is running around like chickens without their heads. it's all horrendous, but you have to do it because otherwise you don't make any sales, right? So the way the mechanisms that they use are, they have like loyalty rewards points that they give you. They do cashback mechanisms, for example, with credit cards. They do outright discounts. They do rebates. So whatever it is that you want to call it, at the end of the day, it's still, you're taking a hit, right? You were making $100. So let's say that you have a margin of $20 in your shoes. So at $100, you had $20 margin. At $90, you only have 10, and so on and so forth, right? So this is what VOW does. It steps into Nike and says, look, you guys have your budget, your year budget for these loyalty rewards programs, and that's $10 million. So it means you're going to write it off as a marketing expense. You're going to take it right on the chin and do the best you can. So don't do that. Here's what you're going to do instead. You're going to take $2 million of those dollars, and you're going to buy VOW. On the basis of that VOW, which you're going to stake, we are going to mint directly to your customers $10 million of discounts. So VOW is actually a proof of transaction network. We only mint tokens when we have physical proof that real goods changed hands in the real world, right? Mm-hmm. And the tokens that we mint, so it's a dual token system where there's VOW, which is a fixed supply token, and there's a family of tokens that are all tethered to national currencies, right? So let's just say in the US, V dollars. So we use VOW as a reserve currency to mint these other currencies like V dollars, right? So what happens is this. You walk into Nike as a customer and you say, I'd like a pair of those shoes, please. And they go, sure, here, give us your credit card. So they charge your credit card $100. You walk out with the shoes. And as you're walking out, you get this text from us, right? It says, oh, Nike just sent you $20 as a discount or a loyal, whatever you want to call it, right? And you say, oh, that's really nice of them. And the message says, click on this link here to go to the App Store and download our app. So you do. And then you install the app, and there's your $20. And you say, wow, that was really cool. But what's a $, right? What can I do with it? And so you walk out of Nike's and into Starbucks, and a cup of coffee is $5, and your app says, oh, we noticed that you are at Starbucks, and presumably you want to buy a cup of coffee. So just enter in here how much you want to spend, right? So you type in $5, you hit the go button, and the app displays a QR code which you can show to the clerk behind the counter. Now that QR code was actually generated by Starbucks. And so the clerk knows, oh, I know what to do with one of those, scans it, gives you the cup of coffee, and have a nice day. At that point, you have this sort of cognition. You say, okay, so a $, is really just $1. It's just not little pieces of paper in my pocket, or it isn't a number in my banking app. It's a number in my wallet, which is just an app, right? Mm-hmm. So $1 is $1, right? And you think, okay, so I really did get my shoes for $80, and that was really nice. What gives the $, their value is that the participating retailers vow, which is actually what what gives the name, they promise to take that $, back in exchange for $1 worth of goods, right? So now you know that you can swap your $, for stuff. And that is actually the foundation of what makes dollars worth anything anyway, right? Yep. The only reason why you hold dollars is because you know that at any point in time, you can go and give them to anyone, and yep. They'll give you something back. The exchange rate, the foreign exchange rate between dollars and shoes, or between dollars and euros, or between dollars and some massage, that varies. But the point is, they're acceptable. So I'll give you a little bit of background on the company itself. It started out as a company that managed loyalty rewards points for customers, and they had 100,000 customers or whatever. Right. And at some point, the CEO said, these token things out there, they look an awful lot like the points in our databases. So we should become a blockchain company, right? And so he went about rewriting the back end of everything into blockchain. And in the process, he discovered that he could do things that he couldn't easily do according to the old mechanisms. And this in itself is really kind of a large breakthrough. There are billions and billions, probably $40 billion worth of loyalty rewards points out there, right? Mm-hmm. And here's your typical experience, right? I buy something with my American Express. I've got these 20,000 points with American Express. And my first question is, okay, that's really great, but what are they worth? And the answer is, I have no idea what 20,000 points are worth. In fact, you can't even actually answer the question in a straightforward manner, because if you use them with American Express, they're worth this much. If you use them with their affiliates, you get a little bit less. If you want physical cash, you'll get half the value, right? So, okay, so now you have uncertainty about what these things are exactly. And then, of course, they expire. Oh, shit, I have to use them, and I forgot to use them, and they bloody expired. And I'd like to, there's also issue of separation, right? The industry set up as a series of silos. So if I earn American Airlines points because I flew to New York, and I'd like to now use those points at Delta, the answer is no, never, ever, ever, ever.
Yep.
Right. And then, of course, if I want to manage those points, the question is, who issued them? And, I have to go onto the American Express website and figure out where the bloody hell they put the thing about the points and to convert them, or maybe it's a disaster from a user experience perspective, right? So what VOW did was they in essence allow, or they empower the merchant to issue a corporate currency, but they denominate it in the unit of account that is local to the transaction. So now it becomes fungible.
Right.
And because it's a token, it's here in my wallet, right? I don't have to go to some arcane website and figure out what my user ID and password was and figure out where to go to do this. And I look at a $V and I think, oh, it's $1. I expect it not to expire. It doesn't expire. I expect it to be able to go anywhere. It goes everywhere, right? And so the first achievement of VOW is that it takes all of these siloed pockets of value, billions and billions of dollars worth, and makes them liquid and fungible.
So I go to, you said Nike. So I'm in London. I go to the Nike store. I buy some trainers. I get £100 they cost me. I get given £20 of V pounds that just turn up in my wallet. And then I'm able then to go walk down the street and go to a clothing store and use those 20 V pounds towards a purchase in that clothing store.
So what happens is VOW is it has a maturity trajectory. In the beginning, in phase one, not so many people are going to understand how it works. Not so many people will have adopted it, right? And so we're going to deal with that in a certain way. But then in maybe stage 2, more people understand that and there's greater adoption. And so certain things get facilitated. So in the very beginning, when you walk into Starbucks, why you're able to spend the V dollars is because we actually take your V dollars, and underneath the covers, we go and we buy a gift card from them, and that actually manufactures on your phone as a QR code, right? They scan that code, they go, this is one of ours, we issued it, all good. And, probably for the short to midterm, a lot of business will happen that way, right? But here's the thing. So at that point, Starbucks doesn't even know anything about VOW, right? What happens is that after a while of doing business, we knock on their door and we say, we've got stats, and everybody loves data, right? Our customers have been shopping with you and have spent this much money, and let me show you a way in which you can actually make a bloody killing. VOW is now operating in 10 different countries. In the UK, where you are, in Ireland, in Denmark, obviously, in South Africa. In India, they've just closed, or in the process of closing a deal. They'll have access to roughly 70% of the retailers. So in one stroke of the pen, 70% of the retailers will be on board in India, right? And we're in New Zealand and Australia. There's talks going on in Hungary, and I think there's a CLC being formed in Spain. So there's like all of this effervescence everywhere on the planet. And so I'm actually co-founder of Alluvial Rewards, which is the CLC in the United States and Mexico, right? And we took Mexico because Mexico is a gateway country. If we roll this out in Mexico, then reaching out to Colombia and to Panama and to everywhere else south is super easy, right? Everyone looks up to Mexico in Latin America.
Can you name some of the companies that are already involved with VOW? Any big names?
Yeah, so I might be speaking a little prematurely. We have a number of initiatives, right? One of them, my partner is actually spearheading that. My partner Michael, he has created a site called vTravel. It is the first travel website that operates entirely on V currencies. And we have greater depth than Expedia does. I mean, we were doing this little demo for, for some guys, and there was someone in the audience that was Scottish, and he said, well, let's just test this, right? Let's see, can we find something in Aran? Well, where the hell is Aran, right? And what's there is everyone's laughing like, yeah, you're going to find something in Aran. Sure enough, there were 20 or 30 hotels already signed up in the vTravel ecosystem, right? So we actually have all of the airlines on the planet now, and about 2 million hotels that are signed up for vTravel, which really means you can take your V dollars in the beginning and later the V euros and V other kinds of things, and then at the very least go travel with them, right? So that's an example of some of the companies that are already on board. We haven't actually started staking stuff because we've been rolling out. I mean, we've gone through the security reviews and the performance and the performance and scaling testing and the user acceptance testing and a ton of integration stuff and the conversion of all of the 100,000 databases of points that they already had, the legacy stuff. It's all getting converted to tokens. So it's just going to be massive.
That's because I know that the voucher market is it's just big numbers.
Exactly.
It's really, really big numbers, and not just big numbers, big spread. Because there are
absolutely. I mean, there was an article not too long ago about how American Airlines and Delta, which are the two largest airlines in America, are actually making more money out of their rewards loyalty programs now than anything else.
Wow!
Right, and so that market is just ripe for disruption, and we are there. We've got the entire infrastructure. We have a model that is truly an apex predator. I mean, when you adopt, so I'll talk a lot about, the sort of back end, but let me just tell you that when you become a merchant in the VAU ecosystem, it gives you a completely unfair advantage over your competition because you're now able to discount at zero cost to you. It doesn't cost you anything to discount, right? And so your competitors across the street, their heads are spinning. They're going, what the hell are those people doing that they can sell the same product for significantly less, right? And they lose market share. And so in some ways, what happens is ultimately the competitor has to either join the VAU network or die.
Right. That is just incredible. How does it tie in with the staking coin, though? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So this is where all the magic is. This is where things really get exciting. Let me talk a little bit about the relationship between the price of a fixed monetary supply and the availability, the liquidity of that, right? We see that in Bitcoin. Bitcoin has 21 million tokens, or 17 or whatever, 18 million, I think we've mined by now. And of that 18 million, only about 1 million or 2 million at most are available for sale in market, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens is as demand increases, the price increases. Okay, so that sounds like I'm stating the obvious because everyone understands the supply and demand dynamic.
Supply, increasing demand.
Exactly.
The price will go up.
But here's the point that I want to make. The relationship is actually asymptotic, right? So if you remember your asymptotes from high school, you have your x axis, which is price, and you have your supply axis, which is x. And as your token approaches zero supply, the price approaches infinity, right? So you have this curve that looks kind of like that. And the key point here is that you can do this with a fixed supply token like VAU or like Bitcoin, right? You just have to create demand. Now, we've just created a mechanism by which demand isn't ideological and isn't speculative. It's actually commercial. So if you think about the Nike doesn't buy VAU because they think, oh, it's real money and we want to have real money. No, they think they know what real money is. Dollars are real money in their heads, whatever, right? That's not why they're buying it. They're also not speculating and saying, oh, it's going to go up in price, so we should go play this this gamble like that, right? No, they manage a treasury. They're buying it because they want to issue discounts. So two things emerge from this fact, which makes the VOW marketplace significantly different from that of Bitcoin or from any other crypto token, or for that matter, from any existing market like the equities markets, commodities, treasuries markets. And that is two attributes of our participant. The first is they're price agnostic. They don't care what the price is, because if they spend $1,000 to buy VOW, irrespective of whether they get 1,000 tokens or 500 or 200, they get the power to mint 5,000 $, which is actually what they want. So they don't give a shit about the price. It's an all-time high. Oh, okay, we don't care. We'll buy it. The second is their diamond hands, because when they buy, they stake that, and then they issue the 5,000 $, and they can't sell it until they receive the 5,000 $. Back. They burn them and they unstake that VOW. So they are not just strong hands, like we call in the market, right? People who hold on to a position for, come hell or high water. These guys are diamond hands. So what we are going to see is, since commercial demand is substantially larger than the speculative and ideological demand, and since our buyers are price agnostic and diamond hands, we are going to see a progression along that curve of supply to price very steadily, right? We are not going to, in very short order, once we start operating, we're going to break correlation against Bitcoin, against interest rates, against everything else, right? Because really, the price of VOW is going to represent not only the aggregate demand on the network for product, but the cumulative aggregate demand. And here's why. Let's say that Nike buys $1,000 of VOW and issues $5,000 of discounts this month, right? They want to test it out. And sure enough, it works. And they're delighted. It's like, wow, that was incredible. Well, we want to do this next month again, but we want to do it a little bit bigger, right? Maybe we'll do $8,000, $10,000, right? And they do it the second month. And they go, okay, that really works. So we'll do it again next month. It's a short while before they understand, actually, we're going to be doing this the whole of the year. So let's just buy an entire year's worth of supply. Or maybe the conclusion is we'll buy an entire 5 years or 10 years worth of supply right now, because we might as well, because we're going to be using it anyway, right? And so now what you have is this competition between the merchants to buy as much VOW as they can as early as possible. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, just drives up the price, right? And then there's the second point. So there's in finance, there's a concept of a Schelling point. A Schelling point is what happens when market participants all reach the same conclusion independently at more or less the same time, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens is eventually the merchants understand. I mean, they look at their accountants. They look at this asset on their balance sheet, and they say, "Wow, look at what VOW's doing. This is spectacular. We want to buy it for commercial reasons. Actually, our CMO wants to buy it, right? Our marketing guys want to buy it because they're doing this incredible business with it. But actually, the CFO, the chief financial officer, is looking at his balance sheet, going, "What's going on here? Oh, it's this asset. What is that? We need to buy more of that stuff, right?" And so you reach a Schelling point with the support of at least two of the key pillars within any business, which is your chief marketing officer and your chief financial officer, right? They reach the conclusion they need to just go buy this thing. And so you reach the second conclusion, which is, why is it going up like this? And the answer is, actually, we're making it go up because everyone's doing this. And that's what causes the price to go up. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now that they understand that hundreds of thousands of retailers are in the business of buying as much VOW as they can, it is their absolute duty to their shareholders to go load up as much as they can manage that, right? And this is where it leads, which is what I'm about to tell you is the truly exciting thing here. There's a point at which the accountants realize that what they're actually doing is they're taking a linear input, which is profits, right? I get $1 today, $1 tomorrow. I add the two, I just got $2. No more, it's linear. But if I take $1 today and I stick it into VOW, and I take $1 tomorrow and stick it into VOW, I don't get $2 worth of capital gains. I get that asymptotic curve worth of capital gains. And so the accountants realize, oh, what we're doing is we're taking a linear input and getting an asymptotic output, and we are also converting what is essentially income, which is taxable, incidentally, for capital gains. So what the customer does is, before they buy VOW, they go create a wholly owned subsidiary in some jurisdiction like New Zealand or El Salvador or the Cayman Islands, whatever, where the capital gains taxes are zero, right? Then they start accumulating the VOW in that jurisdiction. And at that point, they know they're no longer in the business of selling shoes. They're in the business of convincing anyone and everyone that they can to give them these dollars that they can then put into VOW and make the capital gains. As a matter of fact, as a function of the very discounts. So imagine your product's $100, you have a $20 margin, right? So your cost is $80. When you discount that product down to $80, you're now making $0, right? Which means you're also not paying income taxes. So you just wiped out the income tax liabilities of the company while converting to this incredible capital gains in a tax-free jurisdiction, right?
That's amazing.
It gets better because you are now sitting on a pile of VOW, and because VOW is accelerating upwards, you can use the capital gains to offset losses in your sales, which means that you can now start discounting products sustainably below cost all the time. And that is when your competitors' heads start spinning, right? Because no one can do that. You can discount a product below cost. It's called a loss leader, right? You do that with one product to bring people in the door, and then they shop for other things that are nicely marked up. You still, at the end of the day, need to make a profit. But VOW changes that. You no longer need to make a profit. You're in the business of creating capital gains, right? So you can now start discounting below cost sustainably. And the logical conclusion of that is, one day a guy walks into Nike and says, guys, I really love your shoes and I'm willing to pay you $0 for them. And they say, wonderful, here's your shoes. Right? and you see, at that point, the world changes. We are this incredibly deflationary force that at the same time produces incredible capital gains benefits for the merchants. And mind you, not just for the merchants, because here's what happens, right? The first time that I should probably run my VOW app to show the audience.
Works on Android, iOS.
Yes, correct. There's the app, and you can see that you can see like a bunch of different currencies, right? Because we support VRANs in South Africa and I don't even know. I can't really see without my glasses, but whatever.
Okay.
So here's what happens, right? The first time when you install it and you have some $, let's say you had 20 $, right? You look at it and you go, oh, so I now have 20 $. That's nice. And oh, there's this thing called VOW too, and that's trading at $1 a piece. Okay. You think nothing of it, you turn off the app and you go away. A week later, you buy something else, right? And they send you 5 $, and your app goes bing, you got something. And you go, look, oh, I got 25 $. And then you look at VOW and it's $2. And you say, well, why am I holding on to these 25 $, when I could just click this button right here that converts them to VOW for me, right? And you forget all about that. You do it, you forget. A month later, you come back and your 25 $, turned into $100 because VOW is now 4x, right? At that point, you say, I've got money in a savings account that's paying me 0%. I should just put it in there, right? And you do, right? And so what happens is, as VOW goes up, he benefits along with the merchant, right? We don't just make the businesses rich, though the businesses, they have a really hard time sustaining themselves these days.
Yep.
We fix that, but we also make the customer, the retail guy, the little guy, rich. Ben Bernanke.
Mm-hmm.
He was a scholar of the Great Depression, right? His thesis was that the Great Depression wouldn't have been as great or as painful or as lengthy as it was had the central bank issued a lot of liquidity. And so during his term as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, he did exactly that. He created mountains of quantitative easing liquidity, right? And he actually even once said that if he had to, he was going to get on a helicopter and drop $100 bills onto the heads of people, right? They called him Chopper Ben for the rest of his term for that reason. And so he did exactly that. But yet his impact on the economy was really muted, right? It was very minute compared to what was expected from the model. And the reason was primarily that when the central banks issue liquidity, they have a layer of commercial banks in the middle, and the banking system, in essence, absorbed all of that liquidity to recapitalize their balance sheets, and the guy on the ground never saw that money. Therefore, they didn't manage to stimulate the economy, right? And there's question about whether or not that was really the true intent. At the end of the day, they're just putting all of this new money into their own pockets. We know that, right? But this is what VOW changes. When we produce liquidity, it goes to the ground, to the guy on the ground. And then you are in this position where you're going to make an incredible social impact, because there's a woman in Ohio or Idaho or some place like that, right? And this poor creature lives on fixed income. And the prices are rising. And every month now she has to make the decision, do I buy food or medicines? Because I can't afford both. So when VOW steps in, she buys her medicine and she gets this huge discount, and she can now use this discount to go buy food. And that night, that woman sleeps well. She goes, I don't know what happened. God, thank God, whatever God, the gods, or thank the one God or whatever. But I'm going to be okay this month, right? And that the alleviation of that stress, if you think about how much stress the world is under, and not just in Ohio or Idaho, but on a worldwide basis, right? That makes an incredible difference.
Yes, absolutely. But now, isn't that inflationary though?
It's actually deflationary.
Issuing all these V dollars and V pounds, V euros.
I love you, man. You're awesome, because you ask exactly the right questions. So here's a really funny thing about inflation, is that inflation and deflation are really just a question of direction, right? Okay. If you are inflating the monetary supply and putting it in the pockets of the banks, it's inflation. If you're inflating the monetary supply and putting it into the pockets of the little people, it's deflation. Right, because what happens is, okay. Let's talk for a minute about
how is it deflation? And you give it because you'll have more money, more V pounds chasing the same amount of goods, so the value of those goods will go up.
But you'll have more money. But it's okay. So we go back to, where is the money? If the money is in the pockets of the people, then it's a different thing. When I go and I buy a pair of shoes for $100, and Nike says, we're going to give you a discount of $20 in Nike in V dollars, that's called deflation. Prices are going down. Things are getting cheaper for me, right? They're getting cheaper as a function of the increase in the monetary supply, which ordinarily would cause real inflation. So let me step back for a second. There's two forms of inflation. There's economic inflation and there's financial inflation, right? So for the audience, economic inflation is what happens naturally as a function of the decisions made by producers about what the market needs. So let's just say you make potatoes, and you have a choice. You could make potatoes, you could farm potatoes, or you could farm soybeans. And you say to yourself, well, I think there's going to be great demand for potatoes. And so I'm not going to do soybeans, I'm going to do potatoes, right? So you do. And coincidentally, a bunch of other people thought the same thing. Now there's too many potatoes in the market, and the prices tank, right? So that is economic dynamics. Real goods, real price, real demand, and the potential mismatch, and therefore price stress, right? That's your economic inflation. Now there's also financial inflation. Financial inflation derives directly from the management of the monetary supply. And the monetary supply should be, by rights, managed in a way that it facilitates the economic transactions. So what happens is, let's just imagine that on the aggregate, there are $100 worth of demand for product, and only $50 that actually exist. So there's too much demand for the actual number of dollars that exist. So what happens is that increases monetary velocity. The same dollar has has to move around more quickly because this guy needs, right, but he doesn't have the money. He has to get the money. And so that causes inflation, right? That causes prices to rise, not as a function of a mismatch between supply and demand, but as a function of the fact that there isn't enough money available. The opposite, which is deflation, happens when you create too much money, right? Now, matching the monetary supply to the growth rates in the economy is hard. I'll grant you that, right? But also, we are now living at a point where that doesn't even matter. That's like forever and ever the Fed's primary goal was price stability, right? The Bundesbank, it was all about price stability, which meant exactly that. We don't even remember that term anymore, right? Now it's all about political, it's about saving the state from the enormous debts that they've created, right? They can't even pay the interest on the debts that they've accumulated. They have to borrow for that, right? And so now you have central banks catering for interest rates and for the survivability of the state as a function of its ability to borrow just to pay the interest. So in some ways, VOW steps in a really perverse way. It's like a Trojan horse, right? It uses the very mechanisms of the Federal Reserve of central banks, but to create exactly the opposite effect. And that's why I said earlier, VOW is three things. It's a liquidity mechanism. It's the decentralization of currency issuance, right? Because we're now letting companies issue corporate currencies under the guise of a V dollar, united under a V dollar, such that the management of the monetary supply in the world now falls into the hands of the many rather than the Federal Open Market Committee and its 12 monkeys.
Yep.
And then finally, just to be complete, I mentioned that VOW is a fiat to crypto on-ramp, right? And that point is also really, really interesting. If you think about the fact that Bitcoin has not seen the adoption it could have, because the trajectory in people's heads typically is, what is Bitcoin? I never heard about it. Okay, is it safe? Is it legal? Where do I buy it, right? And ultimately, they find themselves to an exchange. Yep. And the exchange says, okay, you want to buy crypto, wonderful. I need your passport. I need your social. We're going to tell your local inland revenue, whatever taxation service, and you're going to be liable. And then people go, oh my goodness, I don't, but I thought I could just buy Bitcoin with cash, like anonymously, right? It doesn't exist. Those networks, here in Finland, there was a website called localbitcoins.com. And it was wonderful because you could go on that site and just find guys in your local city that you could meet for coffee, and you would give them some cash, they give you some Bitcoin, right? Peer-to-peer money, which is actually how Bitcoin was designed, right? What it was designed for. But then what happens is you meet some guy and he tells you, I'm going to buy some drugs with this money, right? And you go, okay, why are you telling me this, right? Like, do I give a shit what you do with your Bitcoin or with your dollars? And you walk away from the transaction and you get picked up by the cops. Mm-hmm. Oh, you were told that this money makes you an accomplice, right? And they start arresting everyone. And now everyone's afraid to do peer-to-peer cash. So that means that your guy who wants to buy Bitcoin has no choice but to go to the exchanges. Yeah. So what happens is Bitcoin doesn't get bought and it doesn't get the adoption that it needed. Now think about VOW. You walk into a store, you spend $100, you get 20 V$. You just onboarded onto crypto and you didn't do KYC.
Okay, but don't they know how do they know your wallet address? And then wouldn't that be connected to your payment mechanism, your credit card or debit card?
Absolutely. But KYC is a very specific mechanism that has reporting duties to the Treasury, right? The fact that some private company in Jersey in the Channel Islands happens to know something about you, well, so what? Everybody knows something about you.
Like my credit card company or debit.
Yeah, they don't have to report you to anybody, right? They just handed you 20 V$, and they're not running off to Inland Revenue to say, or to the IRS to say, this guy. And even if they did, it's 20 V$. It's got zero upside, zero downside. There's no capital gains on it, right?
Yeah.
So for that reason, I think that adoption. Let me put it this way. I found Bitcoin in 2012, right? And when I first read the white paper, I realized that my whole mission in life had just become the fostering of worldwide crypto adoption, right? And so I've spent a good 12 to 22, a good 10 years now, struggling with the issues of banks and the issues of KYC and the incredible complexity and the regulations and the fear and all this kind of stuff, right? So I look at VOW today and I think, gosh, it's such a simple mechanism. I'm giving something away that presumably isn't worth anything, right? It's worth something in a couple of people's heads, the customer and the merchant, but it has no real value, right? We're a discount coupon. We're not money, right? When a V dollar comes into existence, there isn't a dollar worth of collateral saved in a bank, right? It's a promise, which is why the slogan of VOW is the future of money is promising, right? Because it's about making that promise. Yes, I'll take that V dollar back in exchange for goods. And so that fact alone,
it can circulate like a means of value exchange, because I could go to the store, get 20 V pounds, and then go and send those 20 V pounds to a mate of mine for something.
Look, it's a cryptocurrency, right? You can send it to anyone, anywhere in the world, 0.3 seconds, at no questions asked, and with basically without fees. I mean, try it. Look, I wrote this article, I think, called "PayPal is Dead, Long Live Bitcoin" some time ago. I had a friend in Serbia. He was an old guy, and he had medical problems, and he was like, "Can you help me? Send me some money." I tried sending him money. Oh my God, it was impossible. Oh no, it's Serbia. We don't do Serbia. I don't know what's wrong with the Serbians, but the fucking banking systems won't touch them, right? I couldn't wire him money. So I finally sent him Bitcoin, and he had a friend who just cashed it out for him into local whatever they have there, and so it kind of proves the point, right? Crypto is simply better than this enormous apparatus we call the banking system.
Yep, absolutely. And then the businesses, they can also do business-to-business transactions.
Oh my gosh, I really so love you, man. You remind me of all the things that I wasn't going to mention. So here's the thing, right? VOW is starting with the retail business, because the retail sector, because that's its origins. It came from the loyalty rewards management, management of that shit. But the reality is that once VOW is in circulation and there's some degree of adoption, here's what happens. Your restaurateur receives these V dollars back from the customer, right? And he has probably 9 different options as to what to do with the V dollars. Only one of them, which is to burn them so as to de-stake his VOW, right? Another option that he has is he could pay the baker for the bread that he buys, right? And the baker can pay the mill for the wheat, and the wheat can pay the farm for the whatever, and the farm can pay the farmhands. And as a matter of fact, without taking it that far, the restaurateur can pay his employees in V dollars, because they can walk into the supermarket and buy food. They can buy gas from the gas stations with it, right? So at that point, in the mind of the merchant, when they're coming from a mindset where returning coupons cost them money. It's painful. Oh my God, you actually showed up with a coupon. Yes, I did want you to show up with a coupon, and I'm going to try to side sell you, etc. But I know I'm going to take a loss here for this coupon because I give you product without making that money. All of a sudden, and so they're going to think of V dollars in those terms, right? But all of a sudden, there's a switch in the mindset, and they realize, I'm getting an actual dollar for this. Someone walked in the store and they wanted a pair of shoes, and they gave me 100 V dollars. And that's actual revenue. My accountants will book it on the income side potentially, right? If that's what from an accounting perspective makes sense. But I can take these dollars and I can pay my stuff. I can pay my vendors, right? So we walk our way up the supply chain until we own the world, the whole thing.
Hold on. You're not going to get to own the world. You're not going to get to own the world. I'm sorry. Because Goldman Sachs, the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, the ECB, right, the WEF, they're like, wait a minute. You don't get to do the value issuance. We're going to regulate the pants off of you.
Yeah, sure, of course, absolutely. And so I have this to say about it, right? VOW is going to rise in value so quickly that we are going. So there's a term called hyper-Bitcoinization, and it's a mouthful. Mm-hmm. But it basically describes the escape velocity necessary for the planet to realize that they need to buy Bitcoin. So in the beginning, the formula is in the beginning the formula is I should buy some Bitcoin, right? And you do. Yeah. And then the computation is, shit, I should have bought more, because now look at what it's done, right? There's a point at which you're full in. It's like, okay, I'm convinced now. I'm going to take everything I've got, put it into Bitcoin. When enough of the population, and I think it's estimated to be somewhere in the order of 15%, when enough of the population, and for Bitcoin it'll happen way sooner, but whatever. When enough of the population reaches this conclusion, there is an absolute exodus from fiat currencies and into Bitcoin, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You hit $500,000, and everyone's like, oh my God, now I gotta get it, right? I'm missing out here, right? FOMO sets in, and then you hit $1 million, and that just confirms whatever, and until what happens at the end of that process is the 30 families that run the planet will have quadrillions of dollars that now nobody uses and nobody wants. They're just paper and completely worthless because everyone basically repudiated them, and a bunch of castles that they now can't maintain, right? And the little guys that got into Bitcoin early, they're going to be the new billionaires. So the decision making that we do in this world goes from 30 families to 3,000 families, 3 million families, 300 million families, right? And then the world just gets better, because the decisions that a larger number of people can make are necessarily better than the decisions that a very small handful of people can make, because those decisions work in exactly the same way. It's self-interest. But the self-interest of 30 families benefits the 30 families at the expense of the billions of us, whereas if we're making the decisions, we make decisions that benefit us, all of us, right? And so my postulate here, my thesis is, Bitcoin will never see that day because VOW is going to eat its cake. At that point, you can try to regulate me all. Honestly, Rich, they're not even going to know what hit them. This thing is going to grow so fast because it just makes sense for everyone included except the time.
Well, let's look at that. How fast is it going to grow? And why is it going to grow that fast? I mean, how many? You said you got it's already live in 10 countries.
We're live in 10 countries. We have 100,000 retailers already on board. And we didn't even do any marketing yet. Oh. We haven't like Alluvial Rewards literally doesn't have the teams and teams that it needs to have to go chase all of these industries, right? And nor does it even need them. All we need, if you think about it, pick any one sector, right? Go find one guy in that sector, probably one of the smaller ones. Get him on board, and he starts eating market share because he can do stuff that nobody else can do. And then all you have to do is go knock on the big guys and say, see that little guy? He's eating your lunch for you. Do you know why? Because he's part of VOW. And if you don't join VOW, you will die eventually. And so just join VOW, right? And at that point, you own the world.
So tell us about the staking. What's the percentage return on staking?
Right. So for the audience, to clarify terms for the audience, staking essentially means taking an asset that you own and locking it away for some purpose, such as producing yield or voting or some kind of reason. Within the VOW ecosystem, staking is done in order to serve as a reserve against the currency minted. So we are a proof of transaction network, but we mint on the basis of stake. And we stake at the ratio of 1 to 5. So for every dollar of VOW that you stake, you can mint 5 V dollars. That essentially means that VOW is serving as a reserve currency, and you're keeping a 20% reserve, right? Now, this is a little bit like it used to be with the US dollar. The Federal Reserve used to have a reserve requirement on its member banks of 10%, right? And across time, they reduced it. It went down to 2%, and now it's 0, essentially. Now you don't even have to keep a reserve. VOW is actually going to go the other way. We are going to increase. We have a 20% reserve requirement as a way of stimulating adoption and all this kind of stuff. But as adoption increases, we're going to push that up to 40%, 60, 80, and eventually 100%, which really means that for every V dollar that you want to issue in discount, you're actually going to have to put an entire dollar down worth of VOW. And that, of course, merely accelerates the amount of VOW demand in the world. And so what happens is that at that point, V dollars no longer really serve a purpose, right? Now the currency of trade in the world is VOW.
Okay. And then if I'm a retail and I go and buy VOW, can I mint off it?
Absolutely. That's not the only purpose, right? But that is the primary function of you purchasing VOW, is so that you can mint V dollars and V rands and V rupees and V rubles.
I don't have to be a business or anything like that, right? And if people want to buy VOW, where is it available? Which exchanges is it available on?
You can go on the vowcurrency.com website, and there's like 8 different exchanges that we're currently listed on. To be honest, we haven't made much of an effort really to get listed on exchanges, because most of the purchasing that comes from the merchants will go through the CLCs.
Sure.
The purchasing that is going to come from the public itself is done right on the app, right? So we are kind of ambivalent about exchanges. Sure, we're listed on 8 of them or whatever, but not where our focus is.
Yeah, and is there a finite number of VOW tokens, VOW coins?
Yeah. There's a billion tokens in existence.
A billion tokens in existence. All right. And then if somebody's got a business and they want to start using VOW, and they're watching this video, what should they do?
It primarily depends on where in the world they are, whether VOW has representation in that country, right? If someone has formed a CLC. If you're in the United States or Mexico, you can reach out to Alluvial Rewards. That's just alluvialrewards.com, ALLUVIAL. And then we'll on-ramp you. We are doing the on-rampings right now kind of by hand, because we're working with a very few select groups. But eventually we're going to just have on the website a page where you can just go sign up.
Right. Okay. And then otherwise, I imagine people can go to the website and find out whether it's in their country and then get in touch that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that we've, I don't think on the vowcurrency.com website there is a page for, we are in the following countries. We're really, our great focus has been the technology, not the rollout so much. Right, because we have this incredible advantage over every other crypto project in that we have this incredible legacy of customers. So even just getting those customers onboarded with us has been an incredible challenge.
I didn't think we were going to be talking this long. You did warn me. There's a lot we can get into, right?
Yeah, believe me, actually, there's a lot more to this. But
I'm sure there is, and you've been very, very clear. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all the links in the description below and ask people to go check it out and do their own research and stuff. Maybe you want to download the VOW app onto your iOS or Android phone, and then maybe go play with a little bit of VOW and see how that goes. I will be covering this again. Is there any last things you want to say, Erick, before we finish up?
Yeah, I mean, I like the concept of VOW, right? I vow to change the world. That's my vow, my own personal one, right? I am, and this is the mechanism. We have known for quite some time that. So if you look in my blog, I keep a blog on Medium, right? It's just ekkis.medium.com, EKKIS. There's a website out there called. There's an article out there called the Hyperwealth Manifesto, and I talk about how how the tremendous amount of suffering and pain on this planet is very inexorably interlinked with finance. And we know since Satoshi Nakamoto that all we have to do to fix the problem, any problem, almost all the problems, is to simply walk away from fiat, right?
Yes.
And so that's what VOW does. That is the mechanism. So to you guys in the audience, just go buy VOW. That's it. That's your contribution to making the world a better place. If you do that single thing, all of these sort of repercussions will happen, and the world will change.
Yes, very good, very good. Eric, thank you. I look forward to having you on again. Anybody who's watching, if you hold VAL, give me the ticker symbol for VAL. If you don't hold VAL, give me the ticker symbol for VAL. Please do comment. Go check this out. And between now and when I see you next, please keep filling your pockets with the Crypto Profits. This is Crypto Rich and Crypto Eric signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.
Take care.